The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
As I've told you many times, the United States has one of the highest incarceration rates in the world, along with North Korea. However, there are some U.S. states that have managed to significantly reduce their prison populations over the last 10 years, and we now have data about what the effect was on crime in those states. And it turns out that states that have most drastically reduced their prison populations over the last 10 years saw their crime rates decrease by significantly more than the national average. This is according to a new report by the Sentencing Project. The experiences of New York, New Jersey, and California demonstrate it is possible to achieve substantial reductions in mass incarceration without compromising public safety. That is according to the report. Between 1999 and 2012, state prison populations in all 50 states increased by about 10%. States continue to rely on drug war type policies, harsh sentencing, mandatory minimums, etc. But New York and New Jersey simultaneously bucked the trend, each decreasing their prison population by 26% during the same period. Now, nationally, crime rates decreased during this period, but in New York and New Jersey, crime rates decreased significantly more than the national average. California saw a decrease of prison population of to the extent of 23%. They also saw crime decrease by significantly more than the national average. Now remember, even with their reduced incarceration rates, all three of these states still have very high incarceration rates compared to any other industrialized nation. But let's think about this. Reduce incarceration, crime goes down. Why might that happen? It actually makes total sense. We've talked about this before, Lewis, and it's similar to the effect of increasing the minimum wage, right? When you think of the effect on the community of a high incarceration rate, it's easy to see why crime would be high. If children have parents in prison, it is more likely that they will get involved in criminal activity and someday end up in prison. More crime. If more people are in prison, it's more likely some percentage of them will become career criminals while in prison. They will become hardened, radicalized, use whatever term you want. And once out of prison, they will commit more crimes. At every step of the evaluation, it's obvious why more mass incarceration, particularly for nonviolent offenses, would actually lead to more crime in the long run, or in this case, a smaller reduction in crime.
Right. Makes sense to me. And when we talk about how much money we're spending too, there are just so many reasons why we should not have such a huge incarceration rate.
No, that's actually the fiscal argument is an interesting one as well, which is if you have so many people in prison, the cost for that incarceration goes up, and thus the amount of money available for other things goes down, including community initiatives that would reduce crime. And we could talk about what those are. There's any number of them. I mean, it's hard to even summarize. But in every single case, this makes perfect sense. So we clearly have determined that the policy of mass incarceration, the war on drugs, etc., doesn't reduce or deter crime. We've seen how it's not a fiscally conservative policy. And now we actually have evidence that a reduction in the rate of incarceration tends to have a positive effect on crime reduction. I don't know what else it's going to take to convince certain elements of our society. I think it's not really an issue of being convinced by the facts. I think it's an issue of maintaining the prison, industrial, war on drugs, Wall Street complex.
That's it. The war on drugs has to end, and private prisons have to end as well.
Interesting report from NASA, which states that there's a 12% chance for a catastrophic solar storm in the next 10 years. NASA says that if an asteroid big enough to knock modern civilization back to the 18th century appeared out of deep space and buzzed the Earth-Moon system, that the near miss would be almost instant worldwide headline news. 2 years ago, Earth experienced a close shave that was just as perilous, but most newspapers didn't mention it. This was an extreme solar storm, the most powerful in as many as 150 or more years. Daniel Baker of the University of Colorado says, if it had hit, we would still be picking up the pieces. These solar storms begin with an explosion, a solar flare, and then X-rays and extreme UV radiation reach Earth at light speed. It ionizes the upper layers of our atmosphere. Side effects of this kind of solar EMP would include radio blackouts, GPS navigation errors, and then later, as the energetic particles would arrive, we would see magnetized plasma taking following that, a blast of magnetized plasma. And analysts believe that if we were to be directly hit by this succession, that we could see widespread power blackouts. Everything that's plugged into a wall socket would be disabled. Most people wouldn't even be able to flush their toilets because urban water supplies largely rely on electric pumps. This would be catastrophic, and they've quantified this, Lewis, as a $2 trillion potential incident, or to say it another way, 20 times greater than the costs of Hurricane Katrina. What do you think about this, Lewis? 12% chance over the next 10 years. It's certainly not nothing.
No, that's pretty substantial. I mean, certainly enough to make you uncomfortable if you think about it. Hopefully it doesn't happen, but anything can happen. And that asteroid or meteor they're mentioning, well, what if it hits Earth directly, coming out of deep space at a speed that is just, too fast to, I don't know, to even pick up on?
That's another issue altogether.
Yeah.
No, you're completely right. But I think the idea...
chances are it would miss, and it would cause some disruptions, which would cause this.
I think the idea of the solar flare as opposed to an asteroid is that it would be far less predictable, right? And the interesting thing is I did a little searching around online, and NASA has actually issued similar warnings about their concern over these solar storms a few times in the last decade or so. And it's not a new thing, although lately it seems that this claim from them has gotten some more traction. The thing I'm interested in is, do you live your life differently? The solar storm would be a random thing. It's not really predictable. But if you found out that we were a year and a half from an asteroid hitting Earth that was going to truly deal significant damage, do you live your life differently? What do you do in that year and a half?
I would certainly live my life differently if it was going to be catastrophic.
Yeah,
and we all knew it. Certainly, I think it would be wise to live your life differently.
What would you do differently, though, specifically?
More of the things I want to do, see more of the things I want to see, things like that.
So then, why aren't you doing that now?
Well, right now, I have no evidence that something catastrophic is going to happen. It doesn't seem it. The chances are, it seems like it's not going to happen anytime soon. So I just keep going.
All right. Okay, fair enough. I mean, there are some people who, when they think about this, they say, oh, well, you know what? I don't have any real reason to put off doing the things I want to do now just because I don't have that fear specifically. It's very interesting. Different people I talk to react very, very differently to these questions. A Japanese farmer has built a huge indoor vegetable factory. Humans have spent 10,000 years mastering agriculture, but if you have a freak summer storm or a bad drought, it can still significantly affect a year's harvest. A Japanese plant physiologist, his name is Shigeharu Shimamura, has moved industrial-scale farming under a roof. He's working in eastern Japan. Eastern Japan was, of course, hit by a bad earthquake and tsunamis in 2011. He's a former Sony semiconductor factory worker, and he has turned, or rather, he is using a former Sony semiconductor factory. He has turned it into the largest indoor farm. It's illuminated by LED lights. The special LED light fixtures were developed by GE, and they emit specific wavelengths that are optimal for plant growth. Now, listen to this. The systems allow him to grow lettuce full of vitamins and minerals 2.5 times faster than in an outdoor farm. He's able to cut discarded produce from 50% to just 10% of the harvest. And as a result, the farm's productivity per square foot is up 100-fold relative to a standard farm. There are two sides that are reacting to this. One side says this is absolutely incredible. this could be the wave of the future. This, combined with better distribution and resource allocation methods, could absolutely go a long way to solving the world's hunger crisis. At the same time, others believe this is just a GE PR ploy to tout these GE lights and fixtures, and that this can be replicated in many smaller ways, that this is not a big deal other than the fact that they did it in a really big room, period. Amazing, Lewis, that growing lettuce has become such a controversial thing.
Right. Will these light bulbs just end up in people's closets growing their hydroponic pot? I don't know. But when I think about this, I think here's a massive building made up of metal. You've got all sorts of plastics and wiring and electricity. Sure, they're LEDs, they're efficient, but you're still using a lot of power. And I just wonder if it makes sense to have these giant production facilities for growing when you can grow outdoors, and maybe it's more difficult, but certainly could be a lot cheaper.
Right. Even if we consider the waste, what is the total energy footprint of this facility? I wonder if this type of technology, 2.5 times as fast with one-fifth the waste, could this be useful in the thoughts of what a Mars colony might look like?
Absolutely. I think this certainly has plenty of practical applications. Extreme weather's an extreme area, extreme weather areas where you can't grow food normally. I see that working there. Of course, why not?
Send me your thoughts on this. I know that the science crowd in our audience will have a lot to say about this. We've got a great interview coming up for you today. We have some excellent audience questions coming up towards the end of the show. Glad you're with us on this Friday. Check out davidpakman.com/membership to find out how this program is funded and how you can help.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. Welcome back to The David Pakman Show.
Remember, you can support The David Pakman Show with the Amazon.com shopping that you do or plan to do. Just go to our website, davidpakman.com, and click on the Amazon banner on the right side of the page, and then just do your shopping. Even better, bookmark the link and use it whenever you shop. There won't be any forms to fill out. There won't be anything different in your shopping experience, but Amazon will send us a kickback, and your shopping will support our program. You can also become a David Pakman Show member, made possible in part by liberalbias.com. Some statistics suggest that the economy is improving despite having a Democratic president, but those statistics obviously suffer from liberal bias. Find out more at liberalbias.com. Today's new member of the day is Jack Levy. Jack, thank you for being a David Pakman Show member. This program is not supported by large advertisers or big corporations. We are only on the air. We have only been able to expand from once every other week to once a week to twice a week to 4 times a week to 5 times a week because of the membership program. This program would have been long over were it not for that. Go to davidpakman.com/membership to sign up today. This week in show history, 3 years ago this week, we wondered whether we should be increasingly concerned about Christian versions of jihad and a Christian version of Sharia law in the United States. There is more hate speech, there is more rhetoric, and there is more propaganda rather than actual violent acts connected with so-called Christian jihad or Christian Sharia. But we still have the militia scares, we still have the radical religious groups, we still have proof that these ideas are prominent. Remember that the West Virginia mom that recently posed in front of an American flag holding an assault rifle in one hand and a Bible in the other didn't even realize that she was recreating a famous picture of a Hamas member, Reem Rishaya, who conducted a suicide bombing back in 2004. The picture recently went viral. She ended up appearing on Fox News to defend herself from the so-called left. Is there a difference? Is a gun not a symbol of violence? I maintain, Lewis, that the same Christians, many of the same Christians, not nearly all, but many of the same Christians who are violently opposed to Sharia law wouldn't mind a Christian version of that Sharia law that they oppose, and they will never understand the double standard.
Agreed. And the way I look at it, an assault rifle is always going to be a symbol of violence. I don't think you can pose with one and not have that come to mind. I think
Why
that's
not,
the
Lewis?
whole
You
purpose.
couldn't you just be posing and the assault rifle just shows how free you are, how much liberty you have? The gun could be a symbol of liberty.
I guess you could say the same about Reem Riasha. I don't know, David.
Right. Under that logic, maybe a suicide vest is also a symbol of freedom, not a symbol of violence.
If you asked her, maybe she would have said the same thing. So we're getting into some confusing stuff right now.
1 year ago this week, we talked about the extremely high cost of giving birth in the United States. Those who are happy with our healthcare system, those who think it is the best system in the world, to them we should ask, why should a non-C-section delivery and newborn care be on average $30,000 while the U.S. has a very, very high infant mortality rate? And why should those who are insured still be paying thousands of dollars out of pocket? The costs have more than doubled over the last 15 years. They're much higher than other countries at the same level of development. And again, we still maintain significantly higher levels of infant mortality. Those in countries with so-called socialized medicine don't pay anything in many or most cases. And of course, many of those countries have significantly lower levels of infant mortality. The numbers are so clear and they've been available for so long. I don't understand why more people don't just admit it, Lewis, and say, you know what? It's just my opinion. I like a system that I consider to be capitalist instead of socialist, even though I don't really know what those things mean. But I recognize the numbers you're presenting. They continue to deny the numbers.
Right. We are paying more than I think just about any other country per person for healthcare. And logically, if we're paying more, shouldn't the care be better?
Right. You could make a stronger case for paying more if the health care was better. And you could make a case for the health care not being that good if we were paying a lot less. Neither one of those is the case. We're paying a lot and the care is just not very good.
It's ridiculous. And I mean, I don't think mothers should be paying thousands of dollars. Insured mothers should be paying thousands of dollars out of pocket. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, I'm not saying that I would like to have a full-blown, single-payer healthcare system. I think that makes sense. But this just seems like one of those things that should not be so expensive.
Lewis, if you accidentally had a kid, right? It all works out. You love the kid. By chance, you love the kid. Great. We're all thrilled. If then you found out that, I won't say your wife because we've heard about your thoughts on marriage, but the mother of the child had to pay thousands of dollars out of pocket, what would you do? What would your reaction be?
My reaction would be, what could I do? I'd say that really sucks.
You'd say, let's move to Belgium.
Yeah, if only it were that easy.
Yeah. 1 year, also 1 year ago this week, India recognized dolphins as non-human persons, granting them numerous protections. Unfortunately, this did not become the trend that it should have. Many countries have also granted similar protection to the great apes. The protection of cetaceans does not seem to be that much of a priority. I still, every once in a while, I was recently in a conversation, I don't remember who it was with now, but they were basically saying, if you're willing to eat chicken, there's no reason you should be unwilling to eat dolphin. And when I explained, well, but, everybody has their line, but we're talking about drastically different types of organisms here. They just failed to see any difference between eating a chicken and a dolphin, or, because they're both in the water, between eating salmon and eating a dolphin. If you really don't see the difference, I probably can't explain it to you in a way that'll change your mind.
It's interesting. I see a clear difference between, let's say, you and the type of person you're mentioning, although you look identical. And they can't see the difference between a chicken and a dolphin. It's kind of funny, but this is a huge problem. I mean, in Taiwan, dolphin meat has been banned for 20 years, and there's still a huge market for it, and it's still everywhere. It seems like this is just a huge uphill battle. I
actually do think, though, that with this, if people really become informed and demand change can happen. If you look at the movie Blackfish about orcas and SeaWorld, significant changes. Well, actually, let me take a step back. changes that we can identify have actually happened at SeaWorld as a result of that movie and people's increased awareness. So I actually am, on most of these things, I'm very skeptical or pessimistic about the effect of just people being informed on the actual problem. But I actually think with this, people do have a lot to say, because if we change the demand, it will no longer be profitable.
That's it. It's up to people like this to make films, to spread awareness. I think that's the only way you can fight this, and I just hope that people, get up and start doing that.
All right, we've got a great interview coming up next for you. We also have 3 truly excellent audience questions that we will answer in the last segment of today's show. Very, very good questions. Keep the questions coming because people are loving it. We like answering them, and it's leading to a lot of pretty good discussions, both via email, on social media, on YouTube. You can email in your questions for the end of the Friday show, david@davidpakman.com. You can also go to our voicemail line, call 219-2DAVID-P. Leave your questions as a voicemail.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. Welcome back to the David Pakman Show.
This week's classic interview is one a lot of people have asked about. I've mentioned on the program over the last couple of years Mormonism, and I've referred to plagiarized Marco Polo travel documents. And people email me and they say, David, what are you talking about? I don't understand the reference. And this all dates back to an interview that went viral around the 2012 election, where we interviewed Kendall Sheets, who explained his side-by-side comparison of Mormon sacred texts, religious documents, and Marco Polo travel journals have so much in common that he could come to no conclusion other than these were plagiarized. Mormon doctrine was plagiarized from Marco Polo travel journals. So let's take a look at the interview, and then I'll give you some of the aftermath. Joining me is Kendall Sheets. He is an intellectual property attorney and also author of the book of Mormon, Book of Lies. Kendall, it's great to have you. Let's start with the case that you make in the book, which is that Mormon doctrine essentially has been plagiarized.
Yeah, David, what we found was we started an investigation 25 years ago when a couple of Mormon missionaries showed up at our door, and through an investigation of what this Book of Mormon that they were talking about, we didn't know much about, we found that the terms, the words, and the stories had been copied from other sources. And the sources were old travel and history books. The primary source was one called Travels of Marco Polo, which most people are familiar with this. However, that was not the only one. They've also copied stories out of books about Arabia, books of crossing the ocean by Columbus, books from Mexico, and then these books about history of America. So how we found this out was there's words and names in Marco Polo, such as Soraya. And this comes out of, this is the name of Caesarea in Turkey. Well, this was what Joseph Smith, and we believe his father, used, for example, name of a mother in a character in the book. So Joseph Smith, what they did in 1830, they were well known for becoming these things called gold diggers. And they said that they had found some gold plates underground. And these gold plates had these magical characters on them. Right. And they translated these in the Book of Mormon. Well, these characters, we found out, came actually from an old drawing in one of these books. And they were pagan runic symbols. Now, this has not been exposed, this has not been known since 1830. So we were the first ones basically in history to find out where this book came from.
Yeah, it's incredible because if you were just to casually mention to someone, tons of the Book of Mormon is almost identical to stuff in the Travels of Marco Polo. The average person, myself included, would say, well, there's got to be some kind of explanation. And I went into this book pretty skeptical, but when you look at it, I mean, there are passages that are really almost identical. And it's very odd because why would the Book of Mormon, presumably the word of the Mormon God, which came from the gold plates as read by Joseph Smith, why would it match up identically with what's essentially in a travel log? It just doesn't make any sense, but it is there in black and white.
It's there in black and white. And this is the genius. So I call it an ingenious fraud. It's the implications are tremendous, but when you look at the black and white, when you look at the passages, this Book of Mormon is not actually, it's got a lot of religious content in it. And a lot of that comes out of the Bible. And I've actually gone through and shown where they've copied many passages out of the King James Bible. But what the unique part of it is, and what the Mormon Church claims is the unique thing that Joseph Smith wrote, are all these detailed stories of this Jewish family led by this man named Lehi. And he claimed that they came across from Jerusalem. Well, what happened was they copied the travels coming from Jerusalem, going down the coast of the Red Sea, out of this book, Modern Traveler, about Arabia from 1826. This is an 1818 Marco Polo book. This is the original copy, published in England. What they took was books. This is published in 1818. What they did was they took a collection of books from overseas, most of them published in England, some of them published in Philadelphia, and they went line by line methodically through these and copied the passages in black and white, like you said.
So before we get into the modern political thing, there's another thing I want to touch on there, which is when we talk about Joseph Smith, go a little bit into his background, because he had a background of being essentially a con man, did he not?
That is absolutely correct. He had a reputation. He and his father actually started this con, and it was a common thing back in the early 1800s. You can research in old newspapers, which I've done in my book. They claimed to be able to see in the spirit world or see underground and find gold treasure. This is where we get the term gold digger from. And they would con these farmers out of money, saying, oh, we see gold treasure buried under your property. Let's go dig for it. And they would dig up holes all over the country, and it was just ridiculous. So that, and he had a reputation of being very good at this, a very good storyteller. He used that story to claim to see a vision of this angel Moroni in his bedroom that led him to these treasure of underground gold plates. So he had already developed a reputation around the area of being able to actually see treasure. And this is where he parlayed that into then claiming to find a religious scripture.
It's funny because I don't know if this is an offensive comparison to make or not. I don't really know. But what strikes me as interesting is that he was kind of laying the groundwork to what later would kind of be the founding of this religion, in the same way that L. Ron Hubbard with Scientology said, you can make a lot of money if you start a religion, and then that's essentially exactly what he did. It was almost kind of saying, this is what I'm going to do.
That is exactly what happened. We have traced that. They had seen back then that they thought these preachers that were coming through the country were basically con men, and they would get people to give offerings, and they didn't have to work, and the Smiths were desperately poor. They came up with this idea that, hey, we can make money coming up with the religion just like all these other people have, just like Ron Hubbard did, and cash in on it.
Of course, they didn't refer to L. Ron Hubbard since that came later on, but as an example, yeah, I understand.
As an example, that I think that fits. We have traced through the Prophet Smith's mother actually wrote her own book, and I have also deciphered that in the same way I deciphered Marco Polo, and she sort of gave an expose of what the family did towards the end of her life, and this is kind of the surprise ending to my book. And she has basically admitted that, yes, it was for profit. This was to get them out of poverty. And after they created their church in 1830, they started getting a lot of membership within a few years. Joseph Smith actually had a revelation that says he shouldn't have to work, he should be a full-time minister.
Right.
And everyone should give offerings. And another revelation came that they need to build a house for his father. So you can see where this is going.
You certainly can. It's pretty well written out. Hey, Kendall, we have very limited time left, and I wanted to touch on the political thing, but give me a sense of, are you surprised that Mitt Romney's Mormon religion was not more of a factor during the 2012 presidential election?
I personally was very surprised. But I think there were some media that tried, I know NBC, HuffPost, there was others that tried to write some articles about it. I think it was the unknown factor. It was two things. It was the Republicans pushing this candidate, and so people kind of blindly went with whatever, you know, the party vote's going to be.
Right. Evangelical voters who previously thought Mormonism was a cult just kind of blindly accepted Romney.
They blindly accepted Romney, and after they got some of the evangelical, high-profile evangelical preachers to then turn around and endorse Romney, I think that was it. So, but I think it was the education factor. People don't really understand. Of course, no one knew about this. Unfortunately, I didn't finish my book early enough.
Right.
But so I tried very hard. I've been working on this book we've been working on it for 25 years, so it was a long time in the making. But the factor of, I was actually interviewed on Fox Radio, and they asked me the same question, but why the women were turning, some women especially, were turning towards Romney. I think that I said, I think they just don't know. And they asked me, why are Romney's views the way they are? I said, well, you need to dig into his beliefs, his background. His background is sexism in the church.
Right.
Very divided. It's homophobic in the church. They excommunicate intellectuals who are gay or lesbian. They don't like intellectuals say anything bad about the church, and so the church, it does a very effective job of suppressing anyone coming against them internally, and this doesn't let the word get out that, hey, this is actually what they're like. So I think it was a combination of these things. That's why people weren't aware. They didn't wake up. And I told everyone I knew. I was trying to wake everyone up. But
interesting.
Yeah.
All right. The book is Book of Mormon, Book of Lies. We've been speaking with Kendall Sheets. Check out the book. Kendall, great to have you on. Thanks for being here.
Thank you very much. Can I plug my website?
Yeah, go ahead.
www.bookofmormon.bookoflies.com.
Okay, great. We'll take a break, and we will be back with plenty more after this. So after this interview aired, I did receive many, many emails from Mormons saying that some very, very angry, saying that this is, of course, ridiculous. Some saying that they had never heard of this, but that they were actually going to look at the information to see. And if they determined that there is a fit there, that they would probably change their view on their so-called religious texts. And then some ex-Mormons saying, you know what, David, I had a suspicion all along that what we were learning was copied from somewhere, and the fact that every single time that God told the story, it was slightly different, was a red flag for me. But now this has really proven it, and it just confirms that Mormonism is the scam I always believed it to be. So very interesting interview with Kendall Sheets. It was an instant classic when it aired. Hope you enjoyed it. Your audience questions are next.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
Let's get into this week's audience questions. The first one is from Shauna. Shauna says, David and Lewis, are there countries that you wouldn't travel to today? Yes, absolutely. We've talked about this, Lewis, a few times. We've talked about, for political reasons, you've said very strongly you wouldn't go to Russia. Do you still stand by that? And are there other countries right now you would not travel to?
I stand by Russia. Of course, there are some very obvious ones. Would I go to Syria right now? No, I would not. There are certainly plenty of countries in the Middle East and in Africa that, just for safety reasons, I would never go to, and I don't see that changing for a very long time.
I completely agree with you, and there are also there are Middle Eastern countries that are safe, but that I still would not travel to because I would just be afraid of getting arrested for doing something completely insignificant for Western society that is illegal there. When we hear about the couples that have been arrested in Dubai because they kissed on the street, for example, I mean, that just sounds insane to me. And at its core, I also, as interested as I would be in seeing these countries, I don't really want to support that financially. You know, I don't want to support those types of governments at all. So I don't think I would go. And I know that because of this, I would certainly miss out on some interesting places, because there are many interesting places that would otherwise be interesting where I just would say, either for political reasons or just for my own sense of self-preservation, I don't want to risk that at all. However, I don't think that North Korea is on the list of places I wouldn't go. I am so interested in North Korea that if it were one of these group trips where it's unlikely that you would just be singled out and arrested type of thing, I would be quite interested in trying to go to North Korea. Although with the amount of coverage we've given them, who knows how closely they might look into each person that goes. Maybe I would be worried in North Korea about being pulled aside and disappearing.
It could happen. I don't see why not. But it wouldn't be the first time that they imprisoned an American who they claimed was doing something shady. So North Korea, I feel the same way. I'm fascinated by, but I'm not sure if I would do it. And you're right about Dubai, UAE. I feel the same way. I just wouldn't support it, even though it's safe. So I guess of those are the two countries that are safe that I would say I would not go to, Russia and UAE, but certainly any number of countries that are just too unsafe to go to.
I don't think that I would go to Yemen, period. I mean, just being someone who could be identified as Jewish, and who knows what could happen. There's a story I've told on the show about when my dad was invited to go to Yemen to try to assist with some individuals who had been tortured and do a psychiatric evaluation, etc. And he was told, listen, this is not really a safe place for Jews. You will be with bodyguards, and we will get you in and out of the country. You will not stay there in any way. That was enough for him to say, I'm not going to go. And later he found out that it actually would have been bin Laden connected money that would have paid for him to be there. It was the right decision not to go. I probably wouldn't go to Yemen. I don't know that I'd go to Qatar. I know right now we've been talking about the World Cup in 2022 being in Qatar. I don't know that I would go there either.
No, Qatar, a slave state, certainly can't support that. And it's unfortunate. I'm sure there are plenty of incredible things to see in these countries, ancient things, historic things, but it's just, it's unfortunate.
Matt wrote to me, he said, David, if all drugs were legal, are there any that you wouldn't try, that you would not try? Yeah, I mean, most of them, I would say. Lewis, how would you answer that question? If all drugs were legal, are there any you wouldn't try? For me, the question would be, are there any that you would try?
Right. The majority I would still not do, despite the fact that there are many, many people who I have a lot of respect for, people who I think are deeply, profoundly intelligent people, who like to experiment with psychedelics and other mind-altering drugs. I'm very curious about what some of those experiences would be like, but I still think I would not touch them if they were legal.
Do you think that we're getting closer and closer to having technological means of experiencing these states without actually taking the substances? In other words, with virtual reality technology, and soon with the things that we're starting to see developed as far as visual mediums and electronic stimuli, I wouldn't be surprised if 5 or 10 years from now you can experience something that would be almost indistinguishable from being under the influence of most drugs, but it would be electronic and it would not cause any kind of physical addiction or the negative side effects.
That would be fascinating. I guess I would be far more likely to try it if it were in one of those situations where you essentially have some type of electronic device, some type of device overall, tricking your brain into thinking you're experiencing those same, stimuli. But yeah, the current state of these drugs, I don't know. I don't trust them. You never really know what you're getting. And even the ones that are produced in the right way, I don't know. I just feel like I would freak out and have a bad trip, and it would be a terrible experience for me.
There's this scene, I don't remember in what season of Mad Men it is, where a few of them get together and they have, I think it's ecstasy under the supervision of a doctor, right? It's the idea, it's kind of like an ecstasy party, and there's a doctor there to make sure everybody's okay. And is that a situation that would be more appealing to you rather than you just buy something, even if it were legal, you just buy something somewhere, having an expert in administering these drugs give you something that presumably is safe and supervised to make sure nobody gets hurt?
Well, I've read about clinics where it's not really done in this country, but ibogaine clinics, where essentially you are given this hallucinogen, this powerful mind-altering drug that is supposed to help you with addictions you might have.
Yeah, or also with trauma and synthesizing trauma.
Yeah, and this is popular in Mexico and a lot of other countries. There is something to that. And, ecstasy, I don't think, is one of those drugs that you need supervision for. And I know that the active ingredients in that right now are being used in good ways to help with PTSD and things of that nature. So, yeah, I mean, overall, there is something to that. And I think we are headed in that direction.
Okay, Michelle wrote in, and Michelle says, hey, David, you mentioned the NASA statement that there would be alien life, intelligent life found within 20 years. Is it realistic to think that alien life would even be nice to us humans? This is a very, very interesting topic, and this applies not only to alien life, but also to artificial intelligence. And I've read several papers around this idea of when it comes to or to artificial intelligence and robotic intelligence, these fears that the robotic intelligence would turn against humans, that would become evil, right? This is a very popular topic in science fiction writing, in many action movies, etc. And from most of what I read, there's no real reason to think that AI would turn evil, right? That it would turn against humans, that it would turn against its human creators. With alien life, it's a bit of a different question. And there actually is quite a bit of writing about this, which is, first, if we think of why haven't we already been contacted? If there are alien races that are so far ahead of us, why haven't they made contact? And of course, the counter arguments are, well, number one, what if they're not far ahead of us, but they're where we are, right? We haven't made contact with them. Could be the same reason they haven't made contact with us. Neither of us has the technology yet. Number two, though, is the idea that if we were to, I don't know, on Mars find ants, right? We wouldn't really make contact with ants, and or the ants would not have the intellectual capacity to realize that we had made contact with them. So it is possible that if there are alien intelligent life forms that are so far advanced of us that to them we are like ants, they may have tried to make contact and we simply don't have the means by which to notice that they are doing that. Or they might say there's the equivalent of ants to us there and it's not even worth making contact. And I think a lot of people don't ever consider that possibility.
Yeah, that is interesting. There are lots of experts who say that if they have the ability to reach us, to contact us, that there are only two reasons why they would come here. One is to just make contact, and let it be known that they exist. We can find out about each other. It would be peaceful. And the other is that they want our planet or resources and they would just exterminate us. It seems like those are really the only two options.
And I would hope, Lewis, we're now, I mean, this is maybe an overstatement. Maybe I'm going to regret saying this, but I would like to think that we are now getting to the point as a society where we wouldn't just go around the universe making war with others and trying to take their stuff, right? I know that there are probably still many factions on this planet that would want to do that, but I would hope that we're getting away from that and we would think of alien species as those to be at peace with. I hope that if there are other alien species that are significantly advanced relative to us and had the technology to get here, that with that advancement, they would also be peaceful peoples, right? I don't know that it would be that logical when we think about would alien life be friendly to say, well, if they're so advanced that they could easily get to us from far enough away that we haven't detected them, that they'd also be smart enough to realize they don't really have to go around the universe ransacking planets and killing people.
Let me pose a question to you. Let's say you are an alien.
Yeah.
And you have been studying and researching Earth. You know everything about Earth. You know everything about humans. And someone from your alien government says, we are finally going to send down one alien to make first contact with humans.
I'd be worried about getting killed.
Yeah, exactly. Would you want to be that first alien?
No, I wouldn't. I definitely, if I saw how we are at war with each other all the time, if the idea of being one person to come down, I would definitely be worried about getting killed. Unless my race, my alien species, my species was so advanced that we had the technology such that I didn't have to worry about that.
Right. But assuming that's not the case, no. You would not want to come anywhere near this planet because it would be a total disaster. So I'd like to, think about that. I think that's important. All
right, send me your thoughts on this. Very interesting question from Michelle. Keep the questions coming for the Friday show. You can also leave them as voicemails, 219-2DAVID-P. We will be back on Monday with a new week of programs. Of course, if you're a member right now, you could head on to the Friday bonus show. Sign up at davidpakman.com/membership.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.